Hello everyone, welcome to the Infodengue-Mosqlimate Dengue Challenge 2025. Can you see my screen? I hope so. Okay. So the purpose of this presentation is to share the intermediary results, which means that we had the three validation sets, the forecast for the 22-23 year, forecast for 23-24 year, and 24-25, which named validation set 1, 2, and 3, that all teams have submitted their forecasts for all states in Brazil for these three sets. So we'll be presenting and discussing these results today. At a later date, which will be announced towards the end of the presentation, we will also invite all teams again to submit their forecast for next year. So that's a separate thing, and we're going to have another webinar to close the whole experience. But without further ado, let's get started. So this presentation, as I said, will be focused on the results, but I'll start by giving a little overview for those who are participating and watching this presentation for the first time and haven't been able to participate or being present last year. I'm going to talk a little bit about how this event was organized, about the teams that participated, and then we move on to the results. So, as you probably guessed, the Infodengue-Mosqlimate Sprint or Forecast or Dengue Challenge, just different names, is organized by both the Mosqlimate and the Infodengue teams projects and funded by the Wellcome Trust. So Infodengue, a little bit of background. It's a about 15-year-old in providing early warning to the Brazilian Ministry of Health about dengue and other arboviruses. And Infodengue provides this event with all the dengue incidence data that the teams used. The Mosqlimate project, which is started in 2023, is a research group that focused on modeling the impact of climate and the dynamic of arboviruses and tries to do this through an open initiative, bringing together the teams from around the world around a well-constructed and documented data set that can inspire and makes it possible for the results to be reproducible at any time, hopefully in the future, as long as we can maintain all this platform. But yes, that's our main focus. So there are some websites here if anyone is curious and hasn't already visited the websites of the projects. So now for the teams, this year we had 15 teams, about double what we had last year. So it's great. Of course, we could have many more, but you'll certainly believe us when I say that handling the submissions of the 19 predictive models for all these teams was a lot of work on our side, but it's we had an immense pleasure and honor to be able to have these contributions and we'll continue to work on how to better scale this experience of maybe for next year we can handle even more teams and submissions. So we had I'm not going to read, just touch on the institutions. So we have teams from the State University of Rio. We have local teams from my own institution here. We have team for the Federal University of Rio Grande do Norte. We have for Oklahoma State University, Fiocruz, another from my own institution, from Cornell University. from Robert Koch Institute, from Stellenbosch University, um, from the Imperial College, from the KAUST, which already participated last year, from Spain, from the Barcelona Supercomputing Center, led by Rachel Lowe, from the Institute for Scientific Investigation in Torino, uh, in Italy, with another team from a local team, and from Impatec, which is also from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. So those are the 15 teams. And throughout the results, I'm going to be referring more to the model nicknames instead of the teams for space restrictions in the slides, it will be clear. So if anyone wants to ask any questions about which team is that, may ask in the chat, and we'll get that information to you as quickly as you can. So about the event. So I think it's important that we give some of the reasons behind doing this. Well, the main motivation is the huge challenge, to global health that dengue represents. We have 4 billion people at risk of arbovirus infections uh, all worldwide. So that's an estimate from the WHO, but this number may vary as global planetary climate evolves over the next 4 years. Those the populations at risk are mainly limited by the temperature restrictions on the vector for dengue, which is the Aedes aegypti mosquito or Aedes albopictus, which are the main known vectors for dengue. So and in Brazil, we've been dealing with this disease for decades, and just in last year, we had the largest epidemic ever in our country with more than 6 million cases and 6,000 deaths in total. So it's a serious disease. It can be mild for many people, but for a substantial amount of people, especially people with comorbidities, it can be really deadly and serious and deadly. And it's a very important economic burden also due to its scale. So even with vaccines, which we already are beginning to have, and several strategies for vector control, we still can't really um, make a dent to the spread of dengue. We hopefully will be able to, but not yet. So it's important that we understand what makes dengue tick, for lack of a better word. We want to know, when we can expect epidemics, because not every year, everywhere we have epidemics, and how large they are, so that we can at least properly prepare to provide support for the population. In terms of this event, we have set some guidelines. All of you who have participated are aware, but I'll give a brief overview here. We made available the training data for all Brazilian states. We chose to keep the target time series at the state level to simplify the whole work, but we have all this data at the municipality level for if anyone wants for any other purposes. The data is fully open data. We set some target periods, always starting from epidemiological week 41 to epidemiological week 40 of the next year, because of the characteristics of dengue in Brazil that tends to start spreading towards the end of the year and way into the first quarter. So here are the descriptions of our 3 validation sets I've already mentioned, and we have the 3 years And on top of that, like I said, the teams will be invited to provide a forecast for 2026. So uh, there are some other rules, more organizational rules. For instance, all the source code for the models must be kept open source and available, openly available. So it shows to require our participants to maintain a public GitHub repository for that. Sorry. And also, uh, we stated that a specific format for submission, which already available, and if any teams use any external data sources, I mean external to the Mosqlimate platform, they are free to do so as long as they share the data sources with the other teams publicly in our public channels for. Um, and at the end of this exercise, we, the Mosqlimate group team, will be putting together an ensemble model from all the submissions. Excuse me. And in order to be considered for this validation round, for this ensemble construction, each submitted model must provide predictions for all the target variables. So as we designed this, we set ourselves some goals that we wanted to achieve. And as you can see from the check marks, we've achieved all of them. And those goals were to bring you all together to generate a set, provide more like a foment independently built models that can, based on the data sets that we made available, provide hopefully complementary support for handling dengue. Um, we want to be able to train ensemble models from a variety of as large as a variety of models as possible to produce forecasts using the best models, either single or combined in the ensembles, publish technical reports that can be used by the Ministry of Health in Brazil, since the data sets are all concerning Brazil, and update and monitor the performance of these models through our dashboard, which is actively and online, as you can see, as you probably know. Um, and we want to also contribute to the scientific literature about dengue forecasting. And we hope to keep organizing annual sprints. Since this is the second one, I can consider this goal achieved. So in terms of data sources, like I've already touched on, well, our main dengue data source is comes from Infodengue, which does a lot of things. I'm not going to go into details of all these little boxes, but Infodengue does a lot of hard work to be able to maintain this data set consistent and reliable for many years. So we thank the Infodengue project for this support. And the Mosqlimate platform, as you know, because you've used our data to build your models, we provide this all the data sets through a reliable data store API that you can pull the data from, and we'll also provide a model registry where you can register the source code of your models, like the GitHub repository, and also the predictions. And we also provide visualization and scoring tools for the forecasts. So it's now time to talk about how we processed all the submissions both last year. There's a slight change in methodology from last year to this year, but we'll be working to maintain the results comparable. Uh, so basically this year we'll be using the weighted interval score to score all the forecasts because this we took this decision because the weighted interval score makes no requirements in terms of that the predictive distribution of the forecast follows some kind of parametric distribution. So this is more adequate for the sheer variety of models that participate in our event. And so here is the description of the weighted interval score. I'm not going to explain it in details. I would refer you to our written report, which will be shared later, where you can find all the details about how the scoring was actually done with source code. So some more details about the weighted interval score. And in terms of how we put together those scores, uh, it's a delicate topic because there are many ways in which we could average those scores because we had predictions over many states, 27 states or 26 states, considering that one of them didn't have any workable data. So we could have scored the states separately, the years separately, or put it all together. So the decision that we went with in the end was to consider uh, calculating a score for the three validation sets. So the score will be the average of the weeks in that particular year. But for the full ranking of the models, we then would average over the full set of validation years because we wanted to possibly rank the models that had a more robust performance across all 3 years. So, so that we call this the combined state ranking, where we looked at the full period from 2022 to 2025 and average across each year. So we're going to be presenting a more overall ranking, but also rankings by state and by region in Brazil, as you'll see. So there's not a single best model that we want to really, or we can really point to, but different models excel in different situations. So we'll do our best to highlight the performance of all models in a variety of different circumstances. We also perform a regional ranking where we consider the combined ranking statewide for each model within a region. So Brazil has 5 regions: the North, the Northeast, the Midwest, the South, and the Southeast and the South. So we'll have also regional rankings. So there are many rankings. So probably your model will fare differently in these different scenarios. So for the results, finally, we'll start with the best performing models per state. What do we mean by that? We mean that if we look at the whole map of Brazil, I don't have that map right now, but if you look at the whole map of Brazil and we count the number of states at which a particular model was better than the others, considering those scenarios that I just explained over the 3 years, not on a particular year, we had this order. The top model here was best in 5 states. Then we had another model best in 4, and so on and so forth. We don't have 19 models here because some models were not best in any state individually. Better meaning top score for that particular state across 3 years. So just to make it very clear. But that doesn't tell the whole story, because if we look by region now, we have here North, Northeast, Midwest, Southeast, and South. For North, we have this rank in terms of best scores, average for the region. But the Northeast, you see the order changes. Again, the order changes for Midwest, Southeast, and South. So it's fair to say that many teams, went quite well. I'd really congratulate all teams, because no a single team was really bad, and the teams had opportunities to be best performers in many different scenarios. But we're not going to stop here. Let's look at the score state by state, but grouped by region here, just to facilitate our analysis. So in this heat map, we have the 3 validation sets separate now, so that we can zoom in instead of looking at those overall scores where we average over the 3 years. Let's look at each validation year separately. So you can see here that for validation test 1, we have that this team was best, reminding you that weighted interval scores, the smaller the better. So the smaller scores are the better values. So, and the color scales are independent at each column, because each column represents a separate state, and those models are being compared within state now. But for second year, we had different models performing better. And in the third, again, we have a different arrangement. So it's very hard. I think the take-home message here is that it's very hard for a single model, even if we have just 3 years of dengue for validation, it's very hard for a single model to be the best on all of them. And we are very lucky to have had not not in terms of burden of disease, of course, but very lucky to have a huge variety of scenarios within those 3 years. We had 2024 was a very extremely high incidence, and with milder years surrounding it. So we are really able to put those models to the test in different circumstances. So if we move on to the Southeast, we find a different arrangement. I'm not going to repeat myself, but I would like to call your attention to the fact that those numbers in particular, they're not particularly interpretable or easily interpretable, but especially because they are a measure, they are on a scale of the epidemic. So the numbers for 2024, 23, 2024, which is the middle one, the validation 2, they tend to be much larger because all the curves are much bigger. But what matters is the relative value to among models. So moving on, Midwest, we do not have a particular model also dominating, particularly for these second and third years. Although for year 1, there's a model that was pretty good for most states. Um, and For the Northeast, we separated in three slides because there are too many states in the Northeast. So it would be too clumsy to aggregate all the validation sets in a single slide. So here we can see that the GHR model performed quite well on four of the states in the Northeast for the year one. But for validation year two, then the Cornell model, is better in the majority of states. And for validation year three, GHR takes uh, the lead again. But you can see that, in some cases, the dispersion of scores are not that high. And so the difference are not necessarily big. But for some, they can be quite big, as you see. I'm not going to go into each of the numbers. All those heat maps will be also in our written reports with more even detailed analysis that you can peruse and investigate later. So for the North region, it's um, interesting. The numbers are quite small because the numbers in the North region the curves are quite low, not because there are fewer cases, even though, to be honest, in terms of population, it makes sense, but there's also expected to be more underreporting maybe in the North. So there it is. Um, so for validation test two, now for the North, and validation three for the North. So moving on, uh, we thought it would be nice to show you how the models, the predictions showed up in terms of a time series. But the thing is that, we had 27 graphs like that to show. So we selected one state per region to show in this presentation. But all the states are in our report in GitHub that you can then access later and investigate and analyze. But for the So beginning with the north, we got the state of Tocantins, uh, and we chose here to try to make the graph less clumsy. We select a few of the best models, which we colored, five of them to be specific. And the other models, we left them gray and unidentified here, but their individual curves are here. And I think it's very informative, this kind of uh, representation of the predictions, because we can see that, here we have a almost perfect match for 2024 for the imperial model, but we can see that maybe as a consequence of the type of models that are being used, most of the models tend to be too uh, eager to match every up and down of the curve, which might destabilize the predictions. I think there's something that's pretty clear how with sharp edged are the curves. That's the sharp edges in the data are certainly noise and problems in measurement. So models don't need to necessarily follow it every up and down to be a good model. See, we can call it a good example here of one of those green ones, which I don't know which one exactly it is, but it says more smoother curve, but really gives a more believable epidemic curve from a theoretical standpoint here. It's very interesting that, in particular for the state of Tocantins, 2024 was not that uh, greater than the surrounding years, so models didn't have much of a hard time. Another thing that I would like to draw attention to, and I'm not going to repeat myself in the following graphs, is that some models sort of missed badly by providing like big peaks in the non-transmission part of the year. So that's something that is undesirable. Um, so it's something that we should, when we go back to analyze our own models, behavior should be on guard for that and try to minimize that kind of behavior. For the Northeast, we picked the state of Ceará, which again, pretty much the epidemics are the same size except for the last one, which all models overshot badly, because you can see that even the lowest of the confidence bounds here are almost missing the data. So that is one I like to talk about this, because this is one of the biggest problem that we have, is that uh, models that sort of try to predict by um, somehow imitating past behavior tend to fail miserably, because dengue has a huge fluctuation in scale. So there must be some other source of information to inform scale that cannot be necessarily just the size of the previous years. But that's something that's our challenge. I mean, I don't have the answer to that, certainly, and I'm just bringing this up so that we can all reflect on it and think about that for next opportunities we have to model this data. Here for the Midwest region, we have a different situation where 23 was way bigger than 24 and 25. So models tend to undershoot 2023 and overshoot 2024, but they did quite okay in 2025. For Minas Gerais, we had almost, yeah, pretty, general undershoot, in particularly because 2024 was really massive, compared about 5 times what we had in 2023, for instance, or even more what we had in 2025. So it's really hard for a model to pick that up. It's interesting to look at. And to finalize these results, we can look at a state that's interesting in itself, because it's a state that is recently uh, I wouldn't even say it's an endemic yet state for dengue, but it's a recently invaded state by dengue. You know, a few years ago, Rio Grande do Sul did not have any dengue, any substantial dengue epidemics, but then now you see for yourself that there's plenty of cases with very clear epidemics, and yeah, and there you are. I don't think there's any particular thing I would like to really draw attention to in this one. So it's very important to understand, because Rio Grande do Sul, because especially if you look through the years, not just this last 3 years, we can see the gradient as the disease arrives and establishes itself. If you look at the municipality level, it can be quite educational, I'd say. So that concludes our round of results, and that's good, because I would like to leave some space for question and answering, and perhaps we can discuss some aspects of what was said today. But I also would like to say that uh, even our full report, which is right now available in our GitHub repository, um, does not have all possibilities of analysis. And given that fact, because there are so many ways that we can mix and match and the scenarios, the contexts for, I think there's room for further analysis of these results. So I would invite you to peruse the repository where we have our report, because we not only have the report with the figures, but also the code that we use to generate those figures similar to those that you saw during this presentation, and perhaps come back to us to share and discuss. We can set up some meetings in the future, but yeah, more in a more informal way. We can exchange and think about different ways of looking at these results. But let us talk a little bit before we end about how we pretend to go about the assembling of this thing, of these models. So we going to do like we did last year. We will build an ensemble which will be done by performing a pooling of the predictive distributions for all the models of all overall states, you know, all regions and at several levels. And for that, some things will be, some parametric assumptions will be necessary. For instance, we will approximate the predictive distributions to a log normal distributions to facilitate our work, and there's particular methodology we need to do that. And yeah, we'll also have a baseline against which will compare the ensemble. And we're we're in the process of also thinking about different weighting schemes to put those models together in the ensemble. And we'll continue to discuss this within our group, and we hope to discuss a more advanced way of performing the assembly in the next webinar. So as for the following steps, we have we have concluded our webinar with the validation round, and we'll meet again in October 15. But after all teams submit their forecasts for 2026, which is due by the end, near the end of this month. So you have basically a little more than 2 weeks to do that, but shouldn't be a problem because you already have your models figured out. So in terms of a few reminders for when you go to submit your forecast submissions, make sure to use the updated case data, because we've provided an updated data set with the data that became available after our first deadline for submission. And so we have updated epidemiological data and updated climate series as well. And so yeah, these are all on our FTP server, so make sure you update your data sets from there. And as a way of a simple checklist before submitting, make sure all your predictions are non-negative, because otherwise we'll have trouble integrating your model because of our methodology. and make sure that the prediction dates are aligned to start on a Sunday, because that will facilitate the alignment of the curves. Even if they are okay by epidemiological week, they should have a date that beginning date that is a Sunday, just for alignment purposes. Your forecast also should cover the entire period from week 41 of this year to week 40 of next year. That is a challenge that people from last year that participated last year are already used to. It's a little bit more challenging that we had now that we did than it was for the validation rounds, because now your models will have to start forecasting uh, a little bit later than the date where the data set ends. But that's a part of our challenge. Why is that? Because it's just a real world fact that when we get contacted by the Ministry of Health and people who are in charge of planning for next year, they want us to do this, and by now, by October, by September, by October, they're already asking us to be honest with you, but we are pushing a little bit forward. But yes, we have to provide a forecast that starts ahead at the beginning of the incidence curve, and goes all the way through. So there's no way to work around this, because that's exactly what we need to provide the ministry with. And make sure you also only register one forecast per state. Um, yeah, you can submit one forecast per model, but still one forecast per state. Okay, so that brings us to the end, and on this QR code, which I'm gonna be leaving here on screen, you can access the link to our report on GitHub. So now, if you have any questions or things that you want to ask, happy to take them. So,
Thank you, Flavio.
Mhm.
Yeah, we have two questions followed by a brief discussion in the chat. The first one is the Jesse. Um, can I read? Or
Yeah, go ahead and read it.
what was the range of the ranks here? Were they all pretty good, but just a little variable, or were they massively different?
The range of,
Uh,
sorry, I didn't
I
catch it.
I
What?
was saying that we already Flavio basically answered this question when he showed the numbers and the curves actually. So I was just curious whether we were looking at all of those different patterns that we saw between states and between regions, if it was all just minuscule differences or if it was larger differences. And when he explained, look, here are the numbers, and some of them are close, some of them are larger, there really was quite a lot of variability. But also in the time series, it seemed like most models, were at least in the right ballpark.
Yes. Thanks, Jesse, for the question. That's really a very, very interesting thing that deserves further analysis. We are thinking about new ways of putting this together and comparing models, because the scales, and there's another aspect that I didn't talk here, which is sometimes we had an analysis in a written report, which regards the performance of the models in the 3 week window around the peak, which we thought to be a very interesting point in the curve, where to compare the models. Uh, so you can go there, and I didn't include here because it'll be another full set of graphs, but it's in the report. And yeah, so there. What I wanted to say about this is that there are different ways that we could have weighted, if you will, the the score differently to be able to penalize errors differently depending on the importance of the part of the curve that we're talking about. But that's how, it gets combinatorically big when we start to think about all these possibilities. So I sort of count on you all to come up with interesting ideas on how else we could have done this and share with us. Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, there's
If I
one
can,
more.
sorry.
Go.
Because I asked later on, and maybe it's in the same vein, so we don't get off and then have to go back. But were the models submitted with uncertainty values that could be used in the comparison in the weighting, or is that already taken into account with the weighting?
Yeah, the
Or
models
the
were,
weighting, the sorry, not the
yes.
weighting, the score.
Yes, each prediction had yeah, uncertainty bounds around them. We have median and 90% and some other intervals as well. If Eduardo wants to chime in and say it. So yeah, we took that into account. But for the score, you see the weighted interval score, it brings it down to a number which itself doesn't have a well-defined uncertainty measure that we know of from the literature. So it's kind of hard to say when you have like this weighted interval score, are they significantly different from each other? Well, so that's why all we're doing is using it to rank the models, not to necessarily assign some other interpretational uh, description on it from it.
Just to complement, the predictions have four prediction intervals besides the median, and in the weighted interval score, it includes the prediction intervals to compute it.
Okay, thanks, Eduardo.
Hi, I have a question. Um, for the forecasting part of the challenge, do we need to use the same model?
It's a good question. Yes, we would like for you to use the same model so that we can rely on our ranking to be able to choose the models that will go into the ensemble and have at least an objective way of pulling them into the
Okay,
ensemble. Thanks.
that makes sense.
Okay.
There's another question from Paulo Ventura. Paulo, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Yeah, I can spell it out yeah, just wanted to know if there's some classification like by model formulation, like mechanistic, statistical, machine learning. Many reasons like, for example, I'm writing a grant right now and it's nice to have documented how much of these or that formulations we have, and also some analysis by like, oh, what's the variability based on this or that formulation.
That's an excellent point. We actually did not look into that, so we're welcome if you want to go over the repository with our report, and in there you'll find the links to all the models, and it would be nice to understand which kind of model family or whatever methodological family they come from, and how that affect the way they perform, the kind of errors that they make. So that's something that it will be really interesting to do, but we haven't done that yet. So yeah, feel free to do it and share with us, please. And if you want to do it together, we can also discuss and see and collaborate on that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
There's a
Hello,
comment.
I just had a question.
Okay.
Would we be allowed to submit additional models before the 23rd of September? So we submit forecasts from the models that we used before, but if we have a new one, for example, can we create another model on the API and then submit another set of forecasts for that?
Well, you in order to participate in the planned stages of the sprint, no, it's what has been submitted that's going to be used for for the ensemble. And but of course the platform is available. It can be of interest to to use it to test and compare and perform ranks yourself based on the models that are already stored there. So it might be interesting to do it that way, but we cannot change the rules right now and admit new models. I'm sorry about that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Jesse?
Yeah, I had another question. I'm curious whether you've been analyzing them sort of um, comparatively, relatively, spatially. So if the models at least relatively, if some of the models are not particularly good in a certain area, but if that's because they're not reaching the right numbers, but are they spatially, well, maybe you would see the same patterns. But I'd like to see that. I would be interested in seeing that. That's of course what I'm doing and the thing that I'm looking at. So it would be neat to see that for these models.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start to answer this by saying that as you've seen, all the models, the sprint is focused on temporal models, even though they are spread over geographical space. We chose to limit the kind of models to facilitate our comparisons and to be frank. We need to also understand that those time-based models are easier to communicate to public health officials that will use that evidence to influence public policy. So, but having said that, we are definitely interested in considering a different kind of methodology that could maybe include spatial temporal models that would take time and space together in a single model. That would be very nice, but it would make it a lot more complex for us to analyze. Sorry. Anything else? Well, if there are no more questions, I will thank you all again for all your contributions, for the teams that are present here, for all your time and effort in making this possible. It has been it has been really an honor to be able to work with all of you, and I certainly hope to count on your continued support for us to continue to look at the results of this sprint and come up with different interesting analysis, comparative analysis of all the models that have been submitted. Please reach out and let's think about how we can improve the way that, how we can extract more information from this exercise. We'll be looking forward to hearing from you all. Thanks again, and with that, if there are no more comments, we'll end the meeting. Very nice to have you. Bye bye.